Today we will be discussing another hypothetical, the advantages to countries that participate in the Federation. Beyond organizing labor, fixing supply chains, and funding healthcare and other benefits to the international economy, the Federation can also respond to the need for economic development, most significantly for nations that are currently trying to move past colonialism. There are multiple international organizations working in this area currently, including the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, both founded in 1944, and the central banking and banking system itself. The IMF's mission statement states, "The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is an organization of 191 countries working to foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world." The World Bank has the mission statement, "Our mission is to end extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity on a livable planet. This is threatened by multiple intertwined crises. Time is of the essence." Many of the lending systems for governments today were set up during a time when colonialism was not considered bad as long as you were the one doing it. These two institutions were set up in the wake of World War II by the oligarchs of the age who, after the barbarity and genocide of two world wars, had to come up with a more bureaucratic form of colonialism, neo-colonialism, through the means of credit colonialism. Since these organizations' foundation, they have failed to reach their stated goals. But as with anything as Orwellian as these organizations, they are much better at their real purpose as credit colonizers than as agents against poverty. They are not unlike a smaller scale model, that is, the payday lender, only they insist that any money they lend you be spent with their cronies that give you something closer to store credit. They have, in effect, created a global version of the company store that is imposed upon developing nations to funnel those loans into the pockets of the well-connected and powerful. Then, once their cronies have had their way with the nation that took out the loan, the lender takes the benefits and leaves the debt on the nation that wished to develop. This is because, in part, they will only give loans to leaders that will do business their way. In fact, at times they will even take things so far as to give loans to nations in violation of their constitutional systems. This is in part because they do not do this with the intention of the economy always paying off the loan. They do it to reap the short-term benefits of access to that nation's resources. And when the loans cannot be repaid, they seize what little infrastructure benefit they got from the deal. This form of usury can often happen in situations where millions or billions may be suffering from various international incidents, such as the COVID pandemic. These organizations do not exist to alleviate poverty. They are there to facilitate the predation of powerful foreign oligarchs on entire nation-states and their subjects. Imagine that your entire family is dying in a hospital of some terrible sickness, and you are told how insanely expensive the treatment for them all is. And when you cannot pay, the hospital owner calls in his loan shark cousin to give you a loan, collateralized by your home. Then they treat your family and kill most of them in the process. When you cannot pay back the loan and are tapped out on credit, you get a knock on your door, and you are handed an eviction notice. And in the paperwork from the hospital's lawyers, it closes with, "Here at Crony Colonial Health Services, your family and community always come first." That is how these organizations operate. But instead of one family's legacy, they steal the legacy from entire nations from the top down. And since they are more than happy to give loans that are not legally authorized by your nation, sometimes they might let your neighbor use your house for collateral for their family and never even ask you. This makes crony colonial health services, in fact, better than these financial institutions, or, as the World Economic Forum once put it, you will own nothing and be happy. Showing that international oligarchs are all about Leninist Marxist ideas, as long as they themselves get to fill the role of the party leaders who are installed undemocratically to run things. So, if you live in a communist society, you will own nothing, and the party leaders and oligarchs are in total control. And in a neoliberal society, the I hate communists oligarchs own everything and are in total control. If this sounds like the same outcome of the same business model, one simply branded capitalist and the other communist, well, rule by oligarchy is rule by oligarchy. These, to date, are the only choices for developing nations. If you want to brand your oligarchy capitalist, you take out loans from the IMF or World Bank. If you want to label your oligarchy communist, you get your loans from the Belt and Road Initiative. They are the same thing for all intents and purposes, just like capitalist systems have credit scores and communist systems have social credit scores. In both cases, they are scores that give you limited access to credit and services based on the system's approval of how well you behave in the system. At the same time, the oligarchs are not limited by their credit because they have access and influence, and they don't consider that this is because they are better connected and privileged. They get to do this because, according to the system, they are better than you. There is too much wrong with these organizations and their business practices to be covered in one video, and there are entire PhD-level studies that cover this better than we could ever do here. Instead, let us simply point out something about the IMF and the World Bank and their mission statements. If that is really their mission, why is the world the way it is? They have had 80 years to accomplish these missions with wealth, power, and influence, and this world is the result of their work. How are they doing? To put it simply, it is hard to take their mission statements seriously when they are little more than international loan sharks, and then oligarchs in seats of power call these nations. In contrast, the Federation actually intends to address poverty through housing, healthcare, and UBI programs funded through the sale of green energy. How would these other groups do it when their first priority is lining the pockets of the 1%, and such programs would cut into profit? Plus, leaving fossil fuels behind would give them one less limited and critical resource that they can leverage for power, profit, and control. If you don't know how to run an equitable economy, control over the workforce is a must, and a UBI and other such Federation programs would be a direct threat to that interest. With the Federation strategy, each participating nation would be able not only to maintain their own energy reserve sponsorships, but also to get a small share of the global energy sales to build more reserves, to better guarantee that the Federation will be able to pay back the credit taken out to participate. This means each nation can take out a loan and invest in green infrastructure, and the global green energy economy structure helps them repay it going forward, eliminating the demand for international predatory lenders. No more take out loans from me and then spend those credits in my predatory company town store. Because now there is a competing organization saying, we care about people and the environment. Take out the loans you need to build green infrastructure, and we can pay them back with our platform. Your children should not have the burden of international predatory lenders destroying your legacy for profit. Developed nations aren't free from credit colonialism either. Their debt comes because credit colonialists lobby the government for pork barrel spending while rejecting any investment that serves the people or protects the environment. Those same lobbies also refused to pay taxes because that would cut into the profits that they got through their access and corruption. Developing nations can only get loans if those privileged and corrupt businesses get the benefit. And finally, even in developed nations, private citizens get strongly restricted credit based on a combination of monopolistic price fixing, sub-living wages, leaving them drowning in debt in the wealthiest economy in the world that nevertheless only spreads that wealth to the top 1%. When you look at it that way, it's not hard to decide which to choose, a predatory lender or a ranked choice democratic loan guarantor granted through the power of labor organization, services, and green energy that built a system that will make sure that future generations are not burdened with the legacy of anti-democratic loan sharks. The IMF, World Bank, and banking systems have failed because one does not actually try to end poverty if the system of control depends on it. And when did you last participate in the elections for the IMF or World Bank management and leadership? How do you hold them accountable, demand transparency, protect your own privacy from their desire for social control through credit colonialization? The choice is yours. Do you want to obey? Or do you want to vote for the leaders of finance and keep Wall Street from weaponizing monetary policy and macroeconomics against your nation and its democracy, as we see today?